Hi guys, it's Jonathan from Smart Home Sounds here, a home audio retailer based in the UK, and today we're going to be covering some really important things to know about ceiling speakers before you start installing them. So if you're considering getting ceiling speakers in your home, this will be a very useful video for you. So we've rounded up all of your most frequently asked questions about ceiling speakers, as well as mistakes that you need to avoid. We do also have a 3-part beginner's guide to ceiling speakers, as well as a demonstration of our free ceiling speaker design service over on our YouTube channel, which you may find useful as well. So links to those will be in the description below. Now, it's important to know that this is not an exhaustive list of all the possible things to know about ceiling speakers and mistakes that can be made. So do get in touch with us if you have a ceiling speaker project in the UK and you're not 100% sure on the placement, the number of speakers and which ceiling speaker models to choose. And we'll be happy to help your budget go as far as possible. Now, a quick disclaimer. A lot of this video will be focused on using ceiling speakers with the Sonos system, as it is the most popular solution, but a lot of the same points can apply to other brands too. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, very quickly, what we have on the table here today is the Monitor Audio C180, which is a slightly larger than normal ceiling speaker. It has an 8-inch driver, and this is the Bowers & Wilkins CCM 362. It's a slightly smaller speaker, which is the standard size, and it's quite slimline as well. So number one is firstly, how are ceiling speakers installed? So for the most part, ceiling speakers are passive rather than active, which means instead of being plugged into mains power, they need to be powered by speaker cable from an amplifier. Now, the cable runs behind the walls and the ceilings, so you'll need to have access to the ceiling void. That's why for 99% of ceiling speaker installs, they are done when the ceilings are open, such as when you are undergoing a home extension, a renovation, or you're in the process of having your home built from scratch. It is difficult, although not impossible, to retrofit ceiling speakers when the ceilings are closed, as it would be very fiddly indeed. Also, you can wire and install ceiling speakers yourself if you don't mind a bit of DIY, or alternatively, your electrician can install the speaker cables for you. Now, ceiling speakers are traditionally sold in left and right pairs to create a stereo pair. So you'll wire the ceiling speaker to the left channel on the amplifier and the right ceiling speaker to the right channel. You do not wire the ceiling speakers to each other. The ceiling speakers simply go back to the relevant channel on the amplifier. The other end of the cable will attach to the ceiling speaker itself, so you'll first cut out a perfectly circular shaped hole in the ceiling using the cutout template provided with the ceiling speaker. Most ceiling speakers use a dogleg clamping system, so you unclamp the dog legs on the ceiling speakers so that they're held in the ceiling, and then you screw the screws in to secure it before finally attaching the grille. And in most cases, they are magnetic with no further screws, and they're also spray paintable using a water-based paint, so you can match the shade of the speaker to the ceiling. As you can see, once they are installed, they make for a very nice aesthetic in the ceiling. Now, if you're having multiple rooms of ceiling speakers, a lot of people choose a central part of their home to store all of the amps and have all of the ceiling speakers wired back to. Now, this could be a central storage cupboard or a media room, for example, and it keeps things convenient and accessible. You can also ask your installer to get some Cat6 cable installed in the room that the amps are going, so that you can hardwire the amps to your Wi-Fi router if you're having a smart amplifier such as Sonos, so that you can maintain the best possible connection of your Sonos speakers on your network. If you're having quite a few amps, then you can make things even neater by wall mounting the amps either as singles, or there is a wall mounting option that will accommodate up to 4 Sonos amps. So I'll pop a link to the amp accessories in the description below if you need them. Now, if you don't have the facility to wire speaker cable, or you simply don't want to install speaker cable and separate amplifiers in your home, but you're still looking for that ceiling speaker aesthetic, you may wish to consider something like Live Audio ceiling speakers, which offer all-in-one solutions that just plug into mains power, and there are Bluetooth and Wi-Fi options available. Now, you'll still need to create a speaker cable interlink between a pair of live speakers, but you don't need to run any speaker cable to an amplifier, which is quite convenient for some users and also comes in much cheaper than having a separate wired system. Of course, the main drawback of these is that they have one model that is designed to suit all rooms, and you may be looking for a more comprehensive and feature-rich multi-room system than just having Bluetooth or using Live Audio's own app. You will need to weigh up the costs against the benefits, as having a wired approach is suitable for some but unsuitable for others. Number 2 is all about how many ceiling speakers are required to fill a room. So everyone's rooms are different, so I can't say the same for everyone, but we tend to recommend one pair of ceiling speakers for every habitable area of the room. So an example of that could be an open plan kitchen diner. You'd have one pair for the kitchen area and another pair for the diner. Unless you have a very small kitchen diner or where 4 speakers would not be positioned at least 2 meters away from each other, it's usually best to have a left and a right stereo pair per area of the room. So this will mean that everyone in the room, no matter where they stand, should get a nice stereo separation effect. I would say if you plan to have 2 left and right speakers that are positioned more than 5 meters away from each other, you'd probably need another pair, otherwise you risk the sound getting lost in the middle, and if you're standing underneath the left or the right speaker, it may sound a bit strange. Now in smaller areas like bathrooms, it's usually more practical to install a single stereo ceiling speaker, which is a single speaker comprised of a left and right channel, so it will output a stereo sound, albeit not quite as well as having 2 mono speakers on their own. We will come on to other things that you'll need to consider about installing ceiling speakers in bathrooms a bit later on. Number 3 is how many speakers can be installed on my amplifier. You will need to check the spec of your amplifier to find out how many speakers it can power safely, but if we take the most popular example of the Sonos amp, the maximum number of ceiling speakers that you can install on the Sonos amp is 4 if you're using anything other than Sonos's architectural range, or you can actually power up to 6 on the same Sonos amp if you use Sonos's own in-ceiling speakers. Now, to install multiple pairs of ceiling speakers on the same amp, you simply bind the cable together and put it through the same left or right binding post on the amp. It's important to recognize that all ceiling speakers connected to the same Sonos amp will play the same music at the same volume. So if you're looking for independent control between rooms, i.e. that is different music or volumes at the same time, you will need a Sonos amp per room. So bear this in mind when you're considering the number of Sonos amps that you need. A nice little workaround to having multiple amps is to install a speaker switch. So if, for example, you had a kitchen diner that backs onto a patio outside, you could install 2 pairs of Sonos in ceiling in the kitchen diner and a pair of Sonos outdoor speakers for the patio area, all on the same amp. And then a speaker switch would allow you to turn off the outdoor speakers to the indoor or vice versa, or have all of them playing all at once. So while it doesn't give you the ability to play different music on the outdoor speakers to the indoor, it does at least give you some play-pause control on different pairs of speakers on the same amp. You can get a 3-way speaker switch from our recommended brand QED for £75 on our website. Number 4 is, can I install ceiling speakers on a vaulted ceiling? So another common question that we get is, can you install ceiling speakers on a sloped ceiling, an angled ceiling, or a pitched roof? We have seen many customers install ceiling speakers on a sloped ceiling, but it is best to try and position the ceiling speakers towards the bottom half of where the ceiling meets the wall, so that ensures that the speakers aren't positioned too high up. Now, in terms of the ceiling speakers themselves, we always recommend choosing a ceiling speaker that has at least a pivotable tweeter, so you can offset the angle of the ceiling and point the tweeter back down towards the room for the most optimal acoustics. In an ideal scenario, we definitely recommend the Sonos amp with the Sonos in ceiling speakers for a vaulted ceiling, because then you can take advantage of the TruePlay tuning feature that Sonos offer, so the speakers can optimize for their position and make adjustments based on the room size and architecture of the room, which you can toggle on and off so you can see the impact. Now, the Sonos in-ceiling speakers are the only in-ceiling speakers that feature this technology, so it can really make the most of ceiling speakers installed on a vaulted ceiling. In addition to that, the Sonos in-ceiling speakers have a fully pivotable driver, not just a tweeter, so as you can see, the whole drive unit can be tilted around 45 degrees. So number 5 is all about, can I use ceiling speakers with my TV? So the short answer to this question is yes, but there are some considerations that you need to make. So first of all, I'd normally ask prospective customers of using ceiling speakers with their TV if this is truly the best option, because A, you don't always get a great experience when the sound is just coming from above your head, and B, you often end up paying more because you need to use an amp plus the cost of cabling, potential fire hoods, and the cost of the ceiling speakers themselves. Most times you actually get a better experience from having a soundbar, as these are custom built for TV and they come with features that are specific to a TV, like Dolby Atmos, for example. Now, if you want to do away with the soundbar aesthetic and want to keep everything built in, then a better option than in-ceiling speakers would be in-wall speakers, which I've got in my hand here. This is the Monitor Audio W180, so it's a little bit larger than your standard in-wall speaker, but there's plenty of in-wall speaker options all the way from budget up to hi-fi standard. They are more discreet than a soundbar, and you get a much better experience than in-ceiling speakers because the sound is coming from listening height. I would tend to keep in-ceiling speakers for surround speakers or height channels for Dolby Atmos, for example. As the front channels provide the majority of the audio, you'll want to invest the most amount of money in that element of the system. So a soundbar would be a wise choice, or a decent set of in-wall speakers will give you a great experience. Now, if you go for in-wall or in-ceiling speakers for the TV, then you'll want to localize the amp to the TV so that you're able to feed an HDMI or optical cable from the amp to the TV. The Sonos amp also has an IR sensor built in, so you can pair your existing TV remote with the amp for volume control, and it also has a phantom center channel, so it will use parts of the left and the right speakers to balance the audio in the center to emulate actually having a dedicated center channel. The final point to make is if you're using the Sonos amp as surrounds, then you don't need to have the amp connected to anything other than the speakers that it's driving. So you can keep the amp in its own little storage cabinet out of view, providing that is as surrounds to another Sonos TV speaker or another Sonos amp at the front. Number 6 is, if you don't have much space in your ceiling void, can you still install ceiling speakers? The average amount of space that you'll need behind your ceiling to install a ceiling speaker is about 100 millimeters, so 10 centimeters. But there are ceiling speakers that are slightly thicker than that, going up to about 150 millimeters, which are usually the higher end ones. And you've also got slimline ones which go as thin as 36 millimeters. Now, there are certain models that are naturally slim, which are not officially classed as slim ceiling speakers, and good examples would be the Bowers & Wilkins CCM 362, which we have here, or the CCM 382, which both come in at 79mm depth. The KEF range of ceiling speakers is also naturally slim, with the entry-level CI 130.2 CR coming in at 77.7mm, going up to their higher-end CI 200 QR model, which is 109.8mm. You only tend to pay a premium with the super slim models, as the manufacturers have to try and get the same level of sound quality from the rest of their range, but in a very slim form factor. Now, the two super slim models that we sell are the KEF CI160TR and the Monitor Audio CSS 230, both supplied at £500 a pair. Now, I particularly like the Monitor Audio CSS 230 model, as it uses three 3-inch mid-bass units instead of a single cone, so the bass is maximised and you shouldn't need to use any separate subwoofers. Now, number 7 is, do I need fire hoods with my ceiling speakers? So a fire hood engulfs the back of the speaker to prevent the spread of fire within the ceiling void. Now, this is a legal requirement for any ceiling speakers that are being installed where there is a habitable room above, to preserve the integrity of your ceilings in the event of a fire. So if you're installing on the ground floor where there is a floor above you, or if you're in an apartment, then definitely install them. Another benefit of a speaker hood is that they do provide a form of back box to enhance sound slightly and prevent a certain amount of sound leakage. So that means that you can keep your upstairs neighbours happier for longer if you turn the volume up, which is always great. It will also prevent dust ingress that can potentially cause damage to your ceiling speakers in the long term if there is a build-up of it. Now, I would urge you to check with your builder or installer whether a fire hood is required for your ceiling speakers in your particular building, or install them as a matter of precaution if you're not sure. Now, we sell the Fire Topper, which is this one, and the Blue Cube hoods, which are £49 each RRP. Now, number 8 is, which speaker cable should I use with my ceiling speakers? Now, for the large majority of installs, we recommend this 16 gauge 2-core speaker cable being the industry standard, and that's sufficient for most installs. Now, we can supply this cable in reels of 50 meters, which you can see here, with free next day delivery if you need it quickly. So the only time you may need to run better quality cable than this is if any single cable run is longer than approximately 35 meters. The audio signal can degenerate if it travels too far, affecting the sound quality. So in this case, we would suggest upgrading to 14 gauge, which is a thicker cable. If you're running speaker cable outside, then you'll need to make sure that you're using weatherproof cable so it is protected from the elements. And you can also get 4-core speaker cable, which is 4 cores of speaker cable bundled in one outer sheath. Now, this type of cable is particularly useful for single stereo ceiling speakers, as you can then use a single cable run for wiring a single stereo speaker instead of needing to run 2 cables to the same position. Number 9 is, do I need to do anything differently if I want to install ceiling speakers in a bathroom? Now, most of the ceiling speakers that we supply are steam and humidity resistant, which means that as long as they don't get wet and you have appropriate ventilation in your bathroom, they do just fine in a bathroom and kitchen environment, and they won't rust or discolor. If, on the other hand, you want to have the peace of mind of having a fully waterproof ceiling speaker that can be installed inside a shower enclosure or above the bathtub, the Monitor Audio AWC265 T2 is perfect in this environment, and it still gives you plenty of punch to overcome background noise. Now, as most bathrooms are only small, you'll probably only have practical space to install a single ceiling speaker. So in this situation, you will need to install a single stereo ceiling speaker, which outputs a left and a right channel from one speaker. Now, as a result, you will need to install 2 lots of 2-core cable to this position, or a single run of 4-core cable that I mentioned in the last point. Number 10 is, are there any decent alternatives to the Sonos amp that still benefit from multi-room control? Now, it is a question that we get asked a lot, and we did film a video a couple of years back answering the question, why is Sonos so expensive? And we explain in a general way why Sonos speakers are priced the way they are, which you may find useful. In a nutshell, yes, there are alternative brands that also offer a multi-room ecosystem, and we've tried most of them out, and although some of them use a similar method of control to Sonos, they're not quite as intuitive or simple to use as Sonos. So the reason for that is that Sonos simply have the experience designing multi-room systems, and other brands have followed in their footsteps. Now, as Sonos is a Wi-Fi enabled system, you'll benefit from software updates over time, so they will grow smarter over time. Now, an important thing to remember is that there are always cost-saving methods to a ceiling speaker project, whether that's swapping out Sonos ceiling speakers for an alternative brand, but still using the Sonos amp, or swapping out the Sonos amp completely to a Sonos wireless speaker that you just plug into mains power, for example. Or you could install 2 rooms on the same amp and use a switch. There's lots of ways that we can get that cost down if you're on a tight budget, because we are fully aware that home extensions usually run over budget, and audio systems can sometimes be hard to persuade the other half that they're a good investment. So those are our top 10 questions that we get asked about ceiling speakers. I hope you found the answer to at least one of your questions or concerns, and if it did, please drop me a quick thumbs up and comment below if there are any burning questions that you can't find the answer to, and I'll do my best to reply to as many of them as possible. Remember, if you need a hand with your project and you're based in the UK, we offer a free design service to take the stress out of planning it and working out how much it will all cost. Just contact one of our team to get started and check out some of our other ceiling speaker content if you're still contemplating ceiling speakers in general. Now, don't forget to click subscribe if you want to stay up to date in the world of Sonos and home audio, and I hope to catch you next time. Thanks for watching.